22 minutes past 8 on this Friday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to say Alan Quinlan has joined myself and Gavin in studio. Morning, Quinny.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Keeping well. It's been a good week. We were talking to Ron there, but Johnny Sexton on the World Rugby Player of the Year nominees front. Always nice to get the individual lads, and Josh van der Fleer and Johnny and Andy Farrell all getting some credit from their fellow players. Nice to see.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant for them to be recognised and their achievements. I think very special. We had it in probably the last time it happened. We were in this situation was 2018, and when Joe Schmidt got Coach of the Year, Johnny got Player of the Year, and the team got Team of the Year as well. So it is brilliant recognition for a fantastic year they've had. I suppose the only blemish on that run was in Paris against a brilliant French side. They lost by 6 points. I think there was a lot of good stuff came out of that game. They were probably physically, France had a little bit of an edge on them up front, but I suppose I said the only blemish, obviously the first test in New Zealand, but they won the series there. So it's been a very, very positive year. I could probably keep repeating this. I think the players are very conscious, and the coaches as well, of too much hype around it as well, because I suppose nobody predicted that he'd go to the World Cup and win it in 2019 or got too carried away, even though some accusations maybe from people on the outside that Ireland got complacent and stuff. But I think they'll be better equipped, and you've got to deal with success in, I think if you're even telling any kids about winning trophies or winning awards, that you try not to get complacent and don't get too far ahead of yourself. You still got to go to training next week and and do the job. You score 4 goals in one match and one Sunday morning, and you think it's going to happen every week. That sport doesn't work like that. So these guys are playing at the top level, but it's lovely recognition for him, and I'm really pleased for Andy Farrell, because I've huge respect for him. And obviously when you work in the media and you've got to analyse matches and talk about them, I'd find it very hard to say anything bad about Andy Farrell. Obviously you've got to critique things and critique performances, and when you're in top jobs like that, it goes with the territory that your team has to be critiqued if they don't play well. And he got a bit of flack at the start, and Andy, Mike Catt as well did, with some of the performances, but taking over from Joe and going into that role as the head coach himself, he's an inspirational fella, and he's the kind of fella who goes, well, if he just kind of takes it as he goes, and he's very much a here and now fella who wants to try and enjoy the moment. But having played a top level sport the way he did, probably one of the greatest rugby league players ever, hard as nails, and he's just a very humble fella. So I think it's great for him, and it's great recognition for what he's done with this Irish side, and also for Johnny Sexton, to get a nomination again. I think probably after that World Cup and maybe during that year, people questioned him, and a lot of people thought that the age factor was getting there, but his resurgence has been nothing short of remarkable, really. For Josh van der Fleer as well, I think the improvements in his game, the physicality, the edge that he has, the carries, and the consistency has just gone to a different level. So you couldn't argue against their nominations, and it's lovely for them. And then for Dan Sheehan and Mac Hansen to be nominated as best newcomers as well. So I don't think anybody's going to be getting carried away and saying Ireland still have a very challenging situation. And I think the one thing that we all want them to do is go beyond the World Cup, a quarter-final. And so there's a lot of challenges ahead. And when you're on top, Shane, everybody, tries to knock you. So what will Wales be thinking, come that first game in the start of February in the Six Nations? So I think Ireland will be better prepared mentally. But ultimately, no matter what they do between here and the World Cup in France next year, it's still going to be incredibly difficult to go beyond that quarter-final. So we may be sitting here thinking, God, we haven't gone beyond it again. But I think it's the same in life. If you look too far ahead and don't enjoy the moment. So I think they've got to enjoy the moment. And do we need a reality check before then? We probably get one or two anyway. and maybe we'll be if we're well equipped. But the year they've had has been pretty special. I think I'll certainly not forget being up close and personal with what happened in New Zealand over the summer. It was remarkable.
Is the experience before 2019, that World Cup, when obviously Ireland were top of the world after beating the All Blacks in 2018, is that the reality check they need? In the sense that can you see things that they'll learn from that? Because obviously Farrell was adjacent to that whole experience as well.
Yeah. A lot of the players and some of the coaching staff as well. I think Paul O'Connell has come into the mix now. I think knowing Paul so as well as I do and been close to him in dressing rooms for so long, he has this incredible intrigue to leave no stone unturned. And then he has his own presence, the way he can inspire players. I think he's made a lot of improvements and helped probably a lot of the Irish forwards. A lot of them have publicly spoken about that. So I think that whole experience is important. So maybe we don't need to lose games in the Six Nations. Maybe we need to go and win a Grand Slam. And we've got France and England and Dublin, and historically these are the kind of grand Six Nations that the big two are coming to Dublin. So you kind of think it puts you in a better position, but you just never know. I think obviously you want to try and build that resilience, and I think if you focus too much on your mistakes and your past mistakes in your life and in sport, they can kind of hold you back a little bit. You have to be aware and conscious of them, and I think, Gavin, they're going to be absolutely very, very conscious of them. But sometimes games and sport and things are out of your control. You can get a bit of bad luck, you can get some refereeing decisions go against you, you can get a couple of injuries. Ireland need a little bit of luck, and if they can get to France next year in a good position, because if you think of 2019, they had an incredible start. They beat Scotland convincingly. So I thought they were kind of in a great position, and then what happened against Japan kind of derailed things, and it kind of exposed some of the issues around probably the expansion of their game. I think to be able to play a couple of different ways and to add to their attack was probably something that if they had their time back, they would probably look to improve and have a different game plan in the locker. But that probably is the reality check. Yeah,
it's a funny one, and like, you're trying to look ahead to the Six Nations but not get too carried away and not think too far beyond it, but it's impossible
and
not
look,
to. Like,
there's an argument to say, Shane, why are Ireland number one when you look at the list of who France have beaten this year?
Yeah,
they've beaten everyone. To win a Grand Slam, I think their tour is obviously different, being in Japan over the summer, and then to beat Australia, to beat South Africa. I think probably Ireland have it because of what they did in New Zealand, those two tests, when you kind of sometimes the point system, you could argue, is a little bit skewed, but obviously if you beat New Zealand and I don't know how the point system works, but if you beat New Zealand 2 weeks in a row in New Zealand, I presume it kind of enhances the points you get. So like, I genuinely don't think they think they're the best team in the world and that they would get complacent. I think they realise we're probably 2 or 3 injuries away from being 4th or 5th in the world.
Well, the Fiji game showed it.
Yeah, but you know what? It's a very difficult one, Shane, with they're potential banana skins and they're hard to get the emotion right, and I think it does show. And I think what exposed us a little bit and was our reality check, as you asked about Kevin, was that New Zealand game in the RDS. That was a big opportunity, and we were second best in everything in that game. So if you go down the depth chart, maybe if you really go down the depth chart and get a couple of injuries, and if you think if Johnny Sexton doesn't play now, what do we do? I think I feel bad for Joey Carberry, because I would have been thinking get him through Fiji, have a good win and start him against Australia.
Yeah,
give him more exposure there. It's been so stop-start with Joey in the last couple of years.
You know what Sexton can do.
He hasn't got a run of 10 games in a row where you've gone, God, let's analyse those 10 games and say why 8 of them were brilliant. And he's grown in the role, and no matter what talent you have, you've got to get out there and play and be exposed to it. He's played in a Munster team that's been strong one week, weak another week. So we've just got no flow with Joey, and I think he's a wonderful player, and he's very much capable of stepping up to the plate. But we just, unluckily, again, he picks up that head knock last week, and is not involved this week. So his next game could be 2 or 3 weeks for Munster, and then you don't know where that's going to be, how many games in a row he'll play. But so yeah, we are a couple of injuries away from things could be different. So maybe that's me looking at the glass and being uber anxious about, being really conscious of threats and dangers. You have to enjoy it, and I think they're in a really good place. I think all the players say that the camp is a very positive place, and they're enjoying it. So it's good at the moment for sure.
We touched on this with Rog, some interesting comments from Johnny Sexton on his life post playing, I guess, this week, and he was talking about, I think he was asked will he go into coaching himself straight away, and he was saying he doesn't think he'll go into it straight away, and he referenced Rog. He's saying, his family are settled in Dublin, his kids love it here. I'm not going to do something like Rog has done, which is amazing, go to France, go to New Zealand, come back to France, stay in France. He's been away from Ireland for 10 years. I'm not going to do that. Like, I guess he has options, Johnny. That's the thing, and we don't know what type of coach he's going to be if he wants to head that down that direction. But there's no right or wrong way to go about it. Like Rog's recipe for getting into coaching is not necessarily the only way.
That's not the template for everybody, and it wouldn't work. He's a very patient wife and Jess, and a very for her to go on that adventure and kind of back him. And in fairness, she's incredible. With 5 kids as well.
Not easy.
You just think of it. 5 kids moving around all the time, and France is one thing, but going off to New Zealand on 2 stints where they've kind of gone for 6 or 7 months, come back to France and gone again. Yeah, but it's interesting. You think someone like, I always said this about Drico, that surely he'll get into coaching, but you just never know. It depends what presents itself, and when you have young kids, that kind of dictates. You can't just make this decision, and obviously Johnny's wife and his kids will dictate what he does. But you would imagine the most natural transition for him is, the Leinster setup, and there's no reason to say that he wouldn't be really successful in it. That he has to go and get this experience everywhere, because he's that type of a character who's probably been, and I've said this about Paul O'Connell before, these guys are coaching as players. They're literally kind of on it week after week about structures, about the type of game you play, the way you need to change things. So they're practically coaches and assistant coaches for a lot of number of years of their careers anyway, because they're all in those leadership roles. So I think obviously for what he's achieved and the type of character he is, you think there's no guarantees that he would be good as regards dealing with people and managing the ups and downs. And some people say it would drive you cuckoo. If you're so engrossed in it, he's got to get a balance. Obviously, when you come out as a player, that sometimes you just gotta, if that it's that emotional roller coaster that you can't affect the decision out on the field. You can only pass on the information and try and prepare a team. So you would have to imagine Johnny would be someone who would find it hard to let go, because and I hope he's not lost in a game, because I would imagine he could be a very, very successful coach.
Is there a chance he's retiring too soon? I mean, you mentioned the shortlist there. You'll have a much greater insight than it to me, but to my amateur eye, he's still sensational. I mean,
I would imagine if he goes back to his wife and says, "Well, I'm going to give it another year after next year," there could be a conversation about that. But
we can't be too far from
has he put the decision to go after the World Cup.
Like he could decide to keep going, but
if next year. But I think there has to be a time. Look, I don't know. Of course he could, if he's in good shape next year. Well, maybe he'll go on for another year and play till he's 40 or 2 years or whatever. I don't know. But you think at that age that if he can get out of the game healthy, he's played in a very position that's he's been targeted a lot. He's had a fair few bangs and knocks over the years, and he loves the physicality of the game as well. And I've always said this to when you're out in that adrenaline rush and it's something that's just ingrained in you, it's very hard to let go of it. So Johnny's got to be comfortable himself, and it would be wonderful, obviously, if he could finish after a World Cup on a high. And I know you still don't get a trophy if you get to semi-final, but we're probably all worn out of being kind of beaten with the stick of the quarterfinals. But sometimes you could say, well, quarterfinal, semi-final, it doesn't matter, you still not win the trophy. But I think Ireland get judged on that. And
it's like Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile. Like, we don't actually know if we can get to a semi-final until we do it. We haven't done it. Yeah. We need to just do it and get it over the line once.
Yeah, for sure.
So hopefully we can do it. You're talking about the emotional rollercoaster of being a coach. I guess it's the same for a director of rugby, and it's emotional rollercoaster watching Rassie Erasmus's Twitter feed, constantly scrolling, and there's excuses after matches. The word dose comes to mind when you're looking at his Twitter feed. Like, a fairly unprecedented move by World Rugby to give him a 2-match ban for his social media posts, but I don't think anyone is really complaining. Rassie can't really complain either.
It's, you know what, I the first line stuff, a part of me thought this is refreshing and this needs to be addressed. Also in the knowledge and being very conscious of the fact that you're dealing with human beings who are trying to do their best.
Yeah.
And the one thing I see a lot of attached with the comments and stuff online about Rassie now is that there's these conspiracy theories that World Rugby are working against South Africa by some of the fans, and you can go and see them yourselves. It's quite frustrating to see that. And there's, I know a lot of South African people and a lot of good rugby South African people, and they're very knowledgeable on the game. But there's another element of them that actually are kind of blinded a little bit by the effects of this. So, at the start I thought it's definitely the line stuff was born out of absolute frustration and. But the reality is, whether people agree with me or not, is you could look at every game of rugby week after week in underage games, club games, schools games, that a lot of the kind of decisions that are made are interpretations, particularly around the breakdown. You know, did the guy lock onto the ball? Was he on his feet? Did his elbow touch the ground? Where did he come from? Did he come in from the side? There's so many kind of multi-layers of behaviours that it's very, very difficult at times. And a lot of the time we've kind of gone with we just have to go with the decision that's of the referee, his interpretation at that time. Just look at scrums. You look at the international scrums at the weekend. Scrums will go down 2 or 3 times and referee will penalise one side. You look at the replay and as a commentator and you go, it's the actual opposition fella that lost his footing or pulled his elbow down. So you could nearly go through every ruck situation or collision or physical situation where there's a number of players and pick people out. It's a very, very difficult job. And I played at a high level where I had that frustration as a player, and that sometimes I kind of question referees and I question decisions, particularly if I was involved in that breakdown. So it's a very difficult thing. And I understand the frustration. And there's certain games over the years, and you could pick lots of games out. For me, as a former Munster player and as a former Irish player, and covering a lot of Irish games, Munster games and Irish province in the last number of years, I'm often commentating games and I'm going, my God, that's a blatant, that should be the other way, you know. So there was a couple of decisions last week for Wayne Barnes that the possible double movement, it's very, very marginal. Again, if it's given as a double movement, you're saying, fair enough. The try is given, you're kind of going, it's probably 50-50. Isn't that incredibly hard when you think of, there's actually decisions, you're doing the football, you're going to Qatar. It's very rare, bar the VAR decisions, that there'll be 50-50 decisions. It's either a tackle, a yellow card or not, or a player's are to bundle another player over. It's much more, it's probably easier to decide on the decision. Of course there's decisions in football that you're going to go, and particularly around the VAR stuff, that it's so marginal that the goal could be given or could be taken away. But there's a lot of that in the rugby and it's difficult. And I just think Rassie it was probably unnecessary the last couple of weeks. Come back into the game. What happened with the lines, the videos last year and stuff, just come back with a clean slate and put that behind us. And because there's a real kind of quirky madness about Rassie Erasmus that attracts me to obviously what he's done with South Africa. When you think, Shane, we beat them 38-3 in 2017. They were in turmoil. They take over with Jack Nienaber himself, and you know, all the challenges that the South African people have, the crime rate there, so many difficulties that they have to experience throughout their life. So it was a wonderful story, them going to the World Cup, winning it. They've had brilliant success, but you know, if you're coming out in every game and you're this week, Rassie said he wasn't actually referencing the referee, but like,
I mean, he was.
You know,
he appeared to be.
The problem here you have with social media, and it's the same for young people and people in sport, and when you go in after a match and you pick up your phone and you look at it and people can judge you unfairly, negatively.
Yeah.
They don't know the person. So the problem for Wayne Barnes after last week, and the reality is that anybody doesn't know that he's receiving death threats.
Yeah.
His wife is receiving abuse online. So when it gets to that situation, whether Rassie is right or wrong, he's part of something that's brought on an incredible amount of abuse to somebody who I believe has a lot of integrity, Wayne Barnes. And Leinster fans could argue and say, well, one or two decisions in that La Rochelle final should have gone the other way. But if you look back at the Leinster-La Rochelle game, you could look at some stuff in the first half or certain areas in the game that Leinster should have been penalised.
Yeah.
And that's my point. You know, Ireland lost to Japan in the World Cup in 2019. And that game, I know for a fact that there was 15 to 20 decisions that could have went the other way for Ireland in that game. And they were acknowledged behind the scenes through the proper protocols, with Angus Gardner's decisions.
But that's the important thing, that there is a forum behind closed doors. Like if a coach is frustrated at a refereeing decision, they have a way of raising it. Like they don't have to go public
Gavin,
like Erasmus did.
Online now, and in fairness, it's great to see all the social media activity, and you know, rugby's trying to grow as a sport, and it'll always be way behind, you know, football, which is a real global sport. And it's great to see people involved in it and having their opinions. But some of the opinions are nasty. A lot of them can be nasty, blinded. And their argument is, we need to know why these referees aren't accountable. But they are held accountable, but they're not put out in the public square and you know, hanged on a Friday afternoon, like in front of everybody for the baying crowd to throw stones at them. We can't have that. But they are, you know, punished internally, i.e. they don't get certain games. They've got to be demoted if they have a really bad game. There's a certain part of me would love a little bit more honesty and maybe, but if we open that door of a referee being interviewed after a game and or you know, speaking during the week about it, it's risky. It's very, very dangerous because the baying mob will stone them. But I just think it's when Wayne Barnes and his wife have been subject to online abuse like that and threatened, and some of it has been really, really nasty. People can see that. And whether Rassie this week or not, in his own opinion, believes that he was aiming digs at Wayne Barnes, his social media stuff has caused that situation. So it's a pity because he's actually, you know, we're talking about Rassie Erasmus video clips now, not Rassie Erasmus incredible achievements. So
is that part of the point? I mean, the results haven't been great on South Africa's.
Listen, if I was, I'm talking about Ireland there a second ago. If I was in South Africa's position, I would be very, very comfortable with where they're at. They have incredible depth. Obviously, their A team were beaten by Munster down in Cork, but I think they, you know, if they lose 4 or 5 players, they can. I know the quality, we don't know sometimes would be the exact same, but you're handpicking some forwards and props and hookers and things, and you're going, Jesus, that's strength, that's power, that's get them up to speed with the systems and all that kind of stuff, and they're in a really good place. But such a big pool of players to pick from, the European based players players in Japan. They could pick a whole different squad. So there's a huge amount of depth. They're in a good place with what they've done. And I think Rassie Erasmus and Jack Nienaber obviously winning that World Cup and where they're at the moment, they're in a really strong position.
Before we let you go, Quinny, score prediction for tomorrow night? First time
I'm
the
not sure about score
2016.
prediction. I would think it'd be a high scoring game if the weather, there's a bit of rain predicted, and it's heavy rain on Saturday night. So for anyone going to the Aviva, put on a coat. I just feel that Ireland will be pretty conscious. You're talking about kind of wake up call. There'll be a reaction from Australia.
Yeah.
They're a very, very skillful, dangerous side if they're allowed to play. So I think Ireland have got to impose themselves a little bit physically. And, I'm really looking forward to, interested and hoping that Stuart McCloskey can, it didn't happen for him last week against Fiji, but it didn't happen for the rest of the squad, that he can get a real opportunity. It's an exciting game because I think Ireland won't want to wet either. But I think Ireland will be, rather given a score prediction, I think you would think on paper Ireland are 8 to 10 points victors here. But
we take it.
It's a dangerous one, and Australia have shown that when they get going, they scored incredible tries in the Tri-Nations. So we've got to be wary of that. But I think Ireland will win the game.
Lovely. Should be a decent atmosphere as well with the 8 PM kickoff.
And good luck in Qatar.
Thanks. I think I might need it.
A couple of 5-star hotel stadiums there. It was phenomenal. I was looking at some of the videos the other day.
Yeah. Hopefully it goes well. I'd like to see Brazil win it. I think. Who do you think's going to win it, Quinny?
Well, I go on holidays in Portugal every year, so I love the Portuguese people. So,
right.
But
you have to go with them.
There's 3 United players there, isn't it? that kind of wavers me as a Liverpool fan. But France,
you've got Jota as well.
France, we got Jota, of course. France, Brazil, or Portugal.
Fair, France.
One of the 3.
So you're firmly sitting on the fence.
I know, but they're 3. If I was to
pick
3 teams, and if you pin me to it, I'd say Portugal.
Okay, we're going Portugal.
I want to win. I'm not saying they will.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Quinny, great stuff as always. Thanks a million for coming in.